Huw Darnell, thanks for jumping on today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Keeks. Always a pleasure to chat with you, my mate.
What'd you have for breakfast today?
Had for brekkie was mince, leftover mince, and broccolini.
How was it?
Last night's dinner. Yeah, still up for. I did some fasting last 2 days before that. Today had an early start, big day of clients, and I find if I fast on those days, I'm not too sharp with the responses when necessary. So try to fuel up in the morning on those days.
Yeah, definitely something that I've experienced as well. How did you go? Did you just do intermittent fasting on those 2 days before, or what did you do there?
Yeah, intermittent fasting. I went to about 10 one day and 12 the day before that. So yeah, and then I ate dinner probably around 7 or 8 the night before. I find that window of time, if I can get over that initial little window of hunger, like mid-morning, then you can pretty much go as long as you want. But I had a workout, so I just fueled up post-workout.
Yeah. What's the motivation? How long have you been doing that?
On and off, maybe like 2 years.
Yeah.
I just find I go through periods of time where maybe either nutrition's not as clean as I'd like it to be, or just focus changes a little bit, not training as much as I need to. So I just try and dial back the calories to kind of match a little bit. And I just find I feel good afterwards, to be honest. Like if the body's not feeling crash hot in terms of getting a little bit achy, or training volume goes up and just feeling a bit stiff and sore, or like digestive system's not just feeling a bit sluggish. I find that's a good way to, I guess give it a little bit of a reset if you want to put it that way. But feel good afterwards, feel clean. Mental clarity is good when I don't eat through the middle part of the day. So if I've got some like more just like paperwork style stuff, I find that a good way to be a little bit more creative. But yeah, as I mentioned before, if I've got clients, I find if I don't eat for too long, I just start thinking about food instead of thinking about what's going on in the session, which is not a good thing.
Yeah. So generally like a few days a week, like.
Yeah, I find if I do it too many days in a row, I start to like my energy bonks in sessions and my quality of training drops. I find like 2's good, 3 probably max for me, 4 days, then I start to notice a drop in training performance, and I can continue to do it. Like it's not that aspect of it. I just find things start to suffer a little bit.
Yeah, it's not like mentally overly taxing, but it's not. If it's decreasing your performance, your focus or whatever, then it's not serving its purpose.
Yeah, to be honest, I find it mentally refreshing. Like you don't have to worry about what you're eating. Like There's nothing. People struggle with, should I eat this, should I eat that? But if you want to give someone good advice, like intermittent fasting, you just don't eat. That's pretty self-explanatory way of going about it.
Yeah, very black and white, and probably the easiest way to create calorie deficit, but also become a little bit more fat adapted in terms of using fat as a fuel and being able to, not be sugar dependent, not have as much blood sugar fluctuation. Have you noticed anything with that?
Definitely, I think that probably has a little bit to do with the mental clarity side of it. Like I find if I eat early, then I just find that I kind of get more of that less consistent energy throughout the day, thought processes, mind kind of power stuff probably is not as consistent. Whereas if I do the intermittent fasting, I find I'm a bit more level energy wise up until the point where I eat, and then I kind of get, the I guess postprandial kind of glucose coming up, all the stuff going around which you want in your body, but then you get a little bit of a committing kind of like crash after that, I guess, if you want to put it that way. But, kind of illusions. Like I've eaten heaps of different ways. I just find different styles of eating good in different times of my life, or when I've got different focuses or different priorities.
It's a good way to be. Experimentation. Use what works. If it stops working, do something else. It's a nice thing. It doesn't sound like you're ready to get an intermittent fasting tattoo or anything like that. The dogma's not like setting in too deeply, but it's a tool that's playing a part. It's a good way to be.
I've never taken the longest I've done is till night, so like dinner to dinner. I've never gone to your level, mate, and done a few days.
there's a level of stupidity that some people manage to keep themselves away from. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I did 7 days once, and like I was waiting to feel good, and I just didn't come. But I did like 20 RM squat on day one, and I think like that pushing stress hormone stuff like early on probably wasn't a good idea. But anyway, you touched a little bit on being in a clinic there. Do you like, was that what you were planning to do? Like you know, maybe share a bit about what you do, and was that like the idea when you were doing your studies?
Not like, if I go back to when I first started, like I started off heading towards being a chemical engineer, there was like a family business where there was, I guess, a need to kind of go in with that skill set. So I started off doing molecular microbial biology at uni.
Yeah, right.
Got the white lab coat on in the safety glasses. But yeah, kind of quickly realised that wasn't for me. And I always grew sport playing. I always grew up playing sport, and that was a big part of my life. So it was a natural progression that I kind of wanted to be doing something involved with that. I suffered a few injuries, so spent a bit of time in physio offices and shoulder surgery, a few bits and pieces like that. So I knew the importance of
what happened to your shoulder?
I originally heard it's like overuse, I think, was the general kind of like theme of the injury. But I used to swim and play water polo a lot growing up, so pretty aggressive shoulder motion. And then with maybe some shitty genetics of not a great shoulder joint. But then I heard it surfing, didn't give it enough time to heal, and then I completely blew it playing soccer. Dislocated the shoulder pretty badly, did some nerve damage, rotator cuff stuff, and then had to get
soccer.
Yeah. Would you believe it? It's
you getting physical? What happened? You get in contact with someone or hitting the ground?
I dived out and I saved the ball like with an outstretched arm, and it kind of put my arm behind my body a bit, and then my elbow hit the ground in that position of apprehension.
Goalkeeper.
Yeah, goalkeeper.
That makes a bit more sense.
Yeah. I wasn't taking a dive, mate.
Yeah, it was one of those phantom slide tackles, and yeah, that'd be a bad way to do it. You wouldn't want to tell that story.
No.
Yeah, right. So you had a shoulder reconstruction. It's pretty. Did you have a full reconstruction, or what did you get there?
Rotator cuff repair. So
yeah.
Not as extreme as some people get. And then I guess after that, toyed with the idea of not going back to any sport, and then went back to playing water polo again, then blew the other shoulder, then chose not to have surgery because just didn't want to spend that long in a sling again, to be honest.
Brutal, hey? Like the rehab process from the surgery.
Yeah, definitely. Been in a sling for 10 weeks, like 6 weeks full time, and then getting it out on those last 4 weeks of that 10-week period. At the time where I had my P plates, just got them, and then wasn't able to even drive. So it was pretty tough going. But as I mentioned, like spent a fair bit of time around physios in that rehab process, and kind of thought that may have been something that I wanted to get involved with. And then I guess getting back to your question of how I kind of got into more of the clinical stuff. Like my dream was to work in professional sport, and that's kind of where I aimed my studies. And I kind of headed that way in terms of directing some exterior professional development learning, trying to do some work placement stuff, do some internships at different places to kind of build my toolkit and get as much experience as I could in different population groups.
So did you transfer from the microbial science to exercise physiology, or?
Man, I deferred uni after a year and a half of that, and I did a chippies apprenticeship for 2 years. I was on the tool belt.
That's why you're doing your own renovations. That's yeah.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
Yeah, I wish I'd have done that 2 years at some stage. Maybe could have taken a little bit of backpacking out. Might have saved myself a bunch of heartache and dollars. But anyway, it's probably for another story. But yeah, right. So you did the chippy thing, and then you'd already had your shoulder injuries at that point, and then what were you like? How did you get from being a chippy to like where you are now? What was the next step after that?
Well, mate, I was powerlifting at the time, probably not taking great care of my body, just lifting heavy stuff. working on the tools all day, and then the shoulder started to become a bit of an issue again.
Yeah.
And I just kind of got to a point where I had a hard think about what I wanted to be doing in the future. And if my body was that beat up at that age, I didn't really see a long future in that. So kind of explored the option of going back to university again. And that's where I kind of stumbled across ex-phys, sports science, and that got me pretty excited. And, I wasn't a great student by any stretch of the imagination when I was first at uni, like struggling with a few fails. And, I wasn't really that excited by what I was doing. And it kind of showed with the results I was getting. And came back in, kind of started taking up subjects that I really enjoyed more down the line of heading towards that professional sport realm. And, grades started to get better. I started to kind of reach out, started reading T Nation, Eric Cressy, Tony Gentlecord, Dean Somerset, Rippletoe, all the big dogs from the US, and like realised how much more there was to the world than we were being taught in that university model, which I feel like was a big part of my development as a coach, continually kind of training myself and learning from other guys outside of the university model. And I think I was getting towards the end of my studies. So I finished my undergrad exercise nutrition science, and then signed up for a master's clinical ex-phys, and I kind of saw myself going towards that more rehab side of the sports science world. And then, kind of that's when I came across paths with yourself when you were doing Strength Essentials with Corey Bocky back in the day. And I think it was Ben, got on a call with Ben, one of the guys who was helping out you at the time, and it sounded like such a good opportunity that I couldn't let go to be a part of coming to a course like that and getting in part of, that was very early days, maybe even before it was real movement, I'm not sure. But that was when I came across paths with you, and then kind of finding out about guys like Paul Check and different kind of ways of thinking about the prepare for athletic performance path.
Yeah.
I guess it just opened my eyes to a whole new world.
Where were you at with your powerlifting at that time, like going through your degree, and like how serious did you get with it? What were your numbers, or how are you feeling about
that? I think I started off where most people do, with a bodybuilding kind of focus, doing your bodybuilder split, and then got exposed to powerlifting, as I mentioned. So spent a lot of time trying to build up some of those lifts, and by no stretch of the imagination I'm a good strength athlete. I got deadlift up to about 200, around there. Back squat was never great, 150-ish, 140. Bench press, slogged away at it. Never really got that far. About 125 was the best I ever got back in the day. Obviously, not a well-structured individual. A lot of chest biceps.
Yeah, but even I guess regardless of the numbers, like that endeavor probably gave a lot more context to what you were learning at university. Like when I went through, there were probably 2/3 of the students weren't really engaged in strength training or probably anything really physical. Like that, to me, felt like, you're probably not getting as much out of this because you don't really have any context to kind of put it into. In retrospect, it would have been good to be a personal trainer probably at the same time as well, like to already be, doing that. But do you think that contributed? Like, would that be something that you'd recommend to people who studying their exercise science, to have an endeavor there that they're applying things to?
Definitely training and implementing what you're learning is massive in my opinion, because even today, if I don't continue to train, I don't know what things feel like. I don't know the process people are going through as I'm giving them training, programs, exercises, what the execution should feel like. And when you train yourself, you get that intuitive feel around how different things should feel, and how I guess an appreciable rate of a progression with exercise should go. And you start to kind of develop a mindset where you're not so closed off and I guess dogmatic about one style of training. If you're a bit more open and you start playing around with things, which I kind of think that I alluded to earlier when I came across puzzle, I started to think, focus on things like gymnastics, which I would never have thought that you'd do for an athlete, and like Olympic lifting and like movement-based stuff. It was such like an eye-opener, and then training in those techniques myself, like you start to feel how the body feels in terms of, moving better, getting stronger. I think it's such an invaluable part of a young person, a young professional, young coach's development. Like if you're not training yourself, you're missing out on it's more than half the puzzle in my mind. And if you're not training yourself, you're just not going to be able to serve people better either.
It's almost like learning different languages, hey, and then being in a multilingual environment. Like movement's there's so many possibilities, and it's quite complex. But if you've only got like one set of tools, even if in your carpentry, like if you've only got a hammer, then there's only so many problems you can solve with a hammer. If you had to do your renovations just with your hammer, you'd be in more trouble than having a repertoire or speaking multiple languages, traveling the world. Like it's a better way to be, I think. And even if you don't specialize in a certain type of craft or a certain language, having a grasp of it and an understanding of it, like even just being in that environment of like, oh shit, like I can't do this stuff at all, or I don't speak this language at all. Like when you backpack, I think that overwhelm is a humbling and important feeling. Like if when you start, you've been in the gym for ages, you've done some powerlifting, you've done some bodybuilding, like you're king of the world, but then you go to do a handstand or you go to do some juggling or something like that, and you're all of a sudden like back to point zero. You go, oh, this is what it feels like when someone comes in and they don't have a training background or whatever. Like you get that humbleness again. I think within real movement, like everyone has something that's humbling them, whether it's the backflip or whether it's the whatever it is. Some people it's swimming, right? Like that's been a big one. Some of the events like usually have one or two people that are either scared of the open water or they just don't swim. And so whenever we do, like sometimes we've done big ocean swims and stuff, and people have like fully freaked out. Like it's been intense experiences, but I think staying in touch with that very beginner thing and that comfort zone like is a valuable thing for a coach to do, to be in contact with what their client's going to go through, or the athlete. That's probably a good segue to the other challenge that you've taken on there with yourself, that power background and water polo, etc. You decided to get into some triathlon. How was that journey, like pulling on the Lycra and everything that goes with that?
Yeah, mate, I don't mind a pair of funky trunks, so that was a good transition for me. Like growing up, I mentioned I was a swimmer, so I think having that part of the triathlon, pretty, I guess, confident with that part of the triathlon, that was a good thing. And I also did a bit of cycling over the years, but transitioning towards that endurance end of the spectrum, which I had in my mind that if you want to be strong and if you want to be athletic, if you spend too much time on endurance, you get weak and you get slow. And I had a very set frame of mind around thinking about conditioning, and it had to be high intensity intervals, and it had to be fast, and it had to be sprints. And if I wasn't doing that, it wouldn't serve me to become more athletic. And so partly to try and challenge that belief, but also for self-interest, I kind of just got a bit stagnated with my own training. So I thought I'd explore a triathlon. And I hooked up with a mate of mine he's a decent Ironman triathlete, and just so happened to be timing where his strength coach was going back overseas. So he was happy to trade some strength programming for some triathlon programming, and he put me through my paces. I think he was trying to kill me at the start there. But it was a telling experience about how much I'd let those endurance qualities kind of fall to the wayside, and how hard that stuff was to start with. But the rate of progression and like the energy level increase that I was chatting to you about the other week, that it became very apparent that it was something that I hadn't been paying attention on, and I probably should have been, because resting heart rate dropped, body composition was changing favorably, sleeping a bit better. I just felt the energy levels were good all day around. Like I was feeling like it was something that I needed to be doing. And yeah, like you said, that new kind of challenges like running. I hadn't been running for a while, so threw myself back into that and
Yeah.
didn't heed my own advice of, slowly progressing loads and got a few calf injuries and kind of went through the process that a lot of my clients go through of, getting excited with something and really just reeling in and getting the negative adaptation from that, which was, from muscle strains. But it was a fun experience, definitely, for sure. So a lot of learns out of it as well.
I think it's a huge thing, and something that I knew was popping up with athletes was when you keep powering up the hips, if you don't power up the ankles and the knees, like you're asking for trouble. And to a large extent, we would work the knee and we work the hip, but the ankle, a lot of the conditioning of the ankle was really just with their miles on the field, and through that was enough for most guys to be fine because they'd run quite a lot. In the rugby league environment, they'd been running consistently since they were kids, so like generally it'd been quite well developed. But when you make a big jump in hip strength and hip power, and especially if they're coming off the period where they haven't been running, then yeah, you can easily pop into those, calf strain, niggled Achilles, that sort of thing. Like it's probably, it's probably a good thing for you to experience, because now if you're working with any endurance athlete, like that would be a key focus in the early phase, like to, or maybe there's mobility challenges as well there with doing a lot of bike and getting tight calves from the volume on the bike as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like if we take that kind of discussion point and take it to like a clinical, I guess, example or way of some I guess, actionable stuff when you do either with yourself come across something like that, or if you have athletes or clients that you want to kind of see if they lack, even have the ability of the calf to kind of tolerate the strength endurance end of the spectrum, and then all the way through to more of like a strength end of the spectrum from some stuff that you can affect as a coach. Like we use one in clinic, a straight leg kind of calf raise to fail, left versus right. And then that's just a good gross indicator of, do you even have the ability to calf raise consistently for 30 reps minimum? I think there's some good literature around showing that's a good benchmark to hit as an athlete. And then something that often goes unchecked is like the soleus part of that, so bent knee calf strength. So can you get away with objectively measuring that bent knee kind of same raise from a strength endurance point of view? And you could probably even make the argument, if you're doing long distance stuff, you should be getting well over like 50, 60 reps each side when you think of how many single leg steps or stances you take in a run. But then progressing that on to, maybe a calf raise on a leg press, going towards more of like the 5RM, 3RM end of the spectrum, and then ticking that off as well. What's your ability to produce high end force from that end of the spectrum? And like once you've ticked those boxes, then you can start going into things like your skipping, plyos, and you kind of earned the right there with endurance, strength, then go into rate of force development work. But I find that's a good rehab model for guys coming through the clinic with ankle stuff.
And did you work towards some benchmarks like that after you got some niggles?
Yes, I did. And another real cool tool they got at the moment is the groin bar from Valve Performance guys. And you can kind of jimmy rig it to the point where it turns into a seated calf raise. And so I could do some real like max ISO 3 rep max to fail, what I could produce right versus left. And I had some good objective data around what the calves were looking like from that aspect.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's such a cool piece of equipment where your imagination kind of limits what you can do with it. So being in time between clients, heading over and just running through some testing for shoulders and hips. And
yeah. Do you do like the old pec, like squeeze it together? Like
absolutely.
Yeah. Just before the client comes in. No. Yeah, that's cool. You can do like measure something objective around the seated calf raise. I mean, you can, if you've got a seated calf raise machine, you can kind of get something relatively objective. I've been doing heaps of them, working on my calf strength. But is there any kind of tempo you're thinking about with the straight leg calf raise? Is it like relatively ballistic or no elasticity? Or so I think it makes quite a bit of difference, the execution on that.
Absolutely. I think with any kind of, if it's an injury that we're dealing with, we often want to slow the time under tension and the eccentric and concentric component of a lift. And I kind of have I guess the time under tension thought process that you would address with a tendinopathy. So slow concentric, slow eccentric to begin with. And then after that, progressing more towards that rate of force development end of the spectrum where contractions get quicker and you obviously speed of contraction is what you're after there, but early stages is isometrics, it's slow isotonic lifting, like 3 seconds up, 3 seconds down, 4 seconds up, 4 seconds down, that kind of stuff. And then you get away from that a bit quicker.
I've been doing it with the so I've been following that knees over toes stuff and doing like 1 second down, 1 second pause in the bottom, 1 second up, and then 2 second pause at the top. Is really big on like building that strength at the top, with his focus being towards like jumping and dunking and that sort of thing. But there's like a benchmark of, I think it's 25% of body weight for 10 reps, holding the dumbbell in the same side hand. But it's pretty clear with, all the tempos and that sort of thing. So when you're saying that 30, would that be like pretty much just going for it and getting a good stretch on each rep? Because that's also the other thing, whether you like full range of motion or not as, not super tight on it.
Yeah, if it's
is it off a step or is it on the ground? Is it
to start with? It's ground.
Yeah.
Early stage, because if it is a calf strain, we don't want to be.
Yeah.
But do want to definitely progress to step for sure.
Yeah. Is that what you're thinking about with that 30 though, or is that what the testing is? Because I've seen those numbers and stuff before. I've heard the guy that's at West Sydney AFL, like he talks about it. Joyce.
It's off the ground. That's the way.
That's off the ground. Yeah.
And the tempo is to a metronome, 1 second up, 1 second down. If you can't maintain the tempo, you're done. If you need the buckle, you're done. If you use, it's like index finger and thumb on the wall, so you're not getting like a push off the wall.
Yeah.
We used it at Brisbane Lions as well as a pre-season marker of calf stuff, and it was 50 reps per side as like baseline. If you didn't have that, they put a calf strength intervention in place to kind of get you up to scratch.
Yep. So the devil's in the details. Hey, it's massively different if you're depending on how you cut and slice that. But that makes sense. So you spent a bit of time with the Reds and the Lions, the Reds juniors. Yeah, they're at one stage when we were in the early days there. How did you find and then obviously the North Devils as well. So with the Q Cup with my brother's team there, like, do you want to share a bit about like that pro environment and maybe try and like what should people coming through exercise science or sports science who think they want to be in that environment, like what do you think are the biggest things that they should be thinking about?
First part of that, I guess the different experiences. So Reds Academy. I went in there as an intern. That was while I was still at uni doing my studies. That was like such an awesome experience. First kind of dose. Like obviously they're not professional in terms of they're the junior guys under 20s academy, but they're the potential for the future that those teams, Super 15 teams, are going to be drawing from. So having a look at like pre-training screening and like what they're doing when the lads get into training and the environment of having a lot of like young male guys who are really driven to succeed at sport in that competitive environment, what kind of environment that can foster, and how cool it was that they then get supported with medical staff and physical performance staff who are trying to help them in that aspect go to that next step. But then they also had people helping them with other life areas to just kind of make sure that they're making good decisions with their nutrition and making sure that they're taking care of themselves, and kind of seeing like a really professional model of periodized programming put into place for these guys and good coaching with, obviously there was a lot of different athletes in that room at one time, but the guy that ran that, he ran a pretty tight ship in terms of making sure they were progressing week to week, and sometimes form can go out the window when you've got a lot of young guys lifting together, a lot of testosterone flying around, but it was an awesome kind of taste of what that environment could be like. And
yeah,
I guess my next taste of that was when I worked at Brisbane Lions in the as an assistant strength and power coach. That was my first paid gig in a professional team, which was, like as I mentioned earlier, it was kind of all my dreams had come true. That was the pinnacle for me in terms of getting into that environment. And maybe I didn't take the most of that advantage when I was there in terms of like giving it 110%, but it was a cool place to be in terms of learning lots. I was surrounded by guys like Matt Hass and Selwyn. They're both like awesome at what they do, so smart. Like every aspect of training, they've got a good experience with, or they knew people to chat to about it. And like seeing people that driven to be that good at what they do was awesome. And like, I'm not sure if Selwyn sleeps the amount he knows, like, and the amount of guys that he was helping out at that club. But it was cool to be in that environment where everyone's trying to push performance to that like next level, and always kind of pushing the envelope. And
Selwyn's a special guy. He presented did he present at that event that you went to? He was a guest presenter at one of the. Was it that one?
Yeah, the second one I went to in Brisbane. He kind of spoke about his tendon loading model that those guys implement at that were implementing at that stage. But he's such a nice guy. Still keep in touch with Selwyn. He's a great bloke, and he's always very giving with his time. And whenever I've got questions about rehab or program, he's more than willing to kind of have a chat, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, he's a legend.
Yeah, he's a great bloke. And then, that I was there for a season. Then kind of went back to just being full-time in clinic.
They had some shifts with staff, hey? Like there was a few changes at the top, and is that what there was kind of a reshuffle?
New head coach and new performance manager and a few different.
That's welcome to the world of elite sport. That's a big part of the reason why Real Movement Project exists, because if the head coach changes, then potentially everything changes. And as when I was Maya was coming along, it was like, I don't know if I want to be at the whim of the sports gods, but you had a taste of it, pretty early on with that. Was that tough?
Yeah, it's tough. Like we didn't have a great season in terms of wins and losses, and like as I kind of mentioned before, I probably didn't make the most of my opportunity. Like I probably could have given more to maybe have more of a say in whether I came back the next season in terms of staff member. So like you live and you learn. I was trying to do probably too many things at once and didn't put enough effort into putting my best foot forward, if you want to put it that way. And
what would you have done? Like, is it more time there, or what? What do you?
More time. I guess just being more invested in that being my focus and sole priority, whereas I had another job that was paying the bills and paying the mortgage, and like I was probably putting too much energy into that if I wanted the sport to be my number one focus, if I'm 100% honest.
Yeah.
Just in hindsight, like I didn't realise it at the time, but looking back on it now, I realise that I probably should have and could have put a bit more energy and emphasis in. And was it tough? Yeah, it was tough. Like, as I said, it was like what I really wanted to do. And then having that not be what you do again it was a tough thing to go through for sure. Mm. But I was lucky in having a clinic job, and I really love working where I'm at. But that was, cool to have that as a fallback and be able to continue building myself in that aspect, which I feel like I've done a good job of, and gave me another opportunity to go forward and do some work with your brother, which was awesome at North Devils last year.
What was that experience like? Because you're head of the program there, like doing the main sort of meat of the physical stuff, yeah?
So I kind of shared it with another guy. You come across all these legend characters in sport, but Dr. Rich Johnson from ACU, he's another great bloke that I had the opportunity of kind of sharing that program with. So he was more in charge of the sports science and monitoring it, and the running, conditioning, sprinting, big tech stuff. And then my realm was on the black mats, on the turf in the gym. So I was doing the strength and the rehab side of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but awesome environment. Your brother has a kind of similar kind of, I guess, thought process around challenging the norm of the way you prepare athletes. So it was good coming into an environment like that where you got to throw heaps of gymnastic stuff at guys and lots of emphasis on strength and movement quality, lots of emphasis on getting people uncomfortable with developing new skills like juggling, tumbling, hand-eye stuff, feet juggling. Can you pass a footy, but can you kick? Do you have those foot skills as well? Really, really challenging people to become better all-rounded people, athletes, whatever word you want to use there. But it was a cool environment to be a part of from the start. It was motivating as well. Like your brother's been around some awesome coaches, and watching his interaction with different people was really cool. The way he motivated guys to get a little bit of extra performance or challenge their thought process around where their limitations lie and getting a little bit more out of them from a mental point of view. It's not always physical. You might have the goods in the body, but if you can't manifest that into good thoughts, good actions, or not kind of self-limiting your beliefs, then you're never going to live up to your potential. But he kind of seemed to have a good ability to get that little bit of extra out of people and make them believe in themselves a little bit more. And like that was a cool thing to be a part of as well.
Yeah. He's pretty clear on being a career coach, and he's been pretty clear on it from fairly early in his life. He's one of those lucky guys that sort of knows what he wants to do. I think he decided that maybe before he hit his teens. I don't know. It was like pretty early on, and he's been doing it, for a long time and with a lot of passion. And yeah, I think there's so much personal evolution in being a coach and running a program. And I'm glad that you guys got to spend that time together. What was it like with, I guess doing some of that broader skill stuff like that? Obviously, Real Movement really, deeply believes in being kind of a multi-sport athlete, even when you're specializing in one sport, like keeping some physical base, not just, specializing to the point where everything else is horrible. Like, how was it like being in that environment and teaching some of that stuff? And
as I said, it was a motivating place to work. And that was part of it, definitely. Like the guys bought into that heavily. Like it's fun. Like rolling around gymnastic skills is awesome. The guys, every day they're in there before training, juggling, learning how to juggle, and they're challenging each other with handstands and doing some of that cool, more broad-based athletic skills. Can you control your body in space? Can you make it fun? Like that was a big element of being there as well. Like fun, challenging skills like that. It was awesome to be able to implement stuff that wasn't just your stock standard, bench squat. Is
fun allowed in the sports science paradigm? Is that been researched as far as training athletes goes? Is there a study on the fun component?
It might be coming out in 10 years' time. We'll have to wait.
Yeah. It's good. I like it because you've got that clinical side, but then you also like have some touch with the human side, and I'd like to think that that's also part of what Real Movement's done differently, or working with athletes and that, like trying to keep that human side and making sure like the environment is such a huge part of whether a session is successful or not, right? Like you can have things written on paper. I guess you've seen a bunch of different environments now where what's written on paper doesn't necessarily determine the training outcome. Like there's so much between what's on the paper or what you prescribe to a client and how they execute it and their motivation towards it and the standards that are set around them and that sort of thing. Like, I don't know what I'm getting at with this, but it's like
100% agree. And they've done studies on people's outcomes from treatment depend heavily on whether they like the person that's treating them or not. So I guess you could relate that to having fun or having a good mindset around what you're doing, but it's 100% true. And the more you chat to guys who are involved in professional sport, the more they realize, oh yes, it matters what you do. Like if the guys aren't having fun doing it, then you're going to have a real hard time getting good performance out of the lads. And that's kind of like a consistent message you hear from people who work in professional sport even.
Yeah, definitely. That's something that I think is massively underemphasized and underestimated when you do a degree. And, maybe they can't teach it. Maybe it's not their, their place to teach it. But like the human skills are a huge part of employability. And for the most part, you only really develop them if you, like, on your prac placement, if you get a good prac placement and you buy into that properly, which is not necessarily the case for a lot of people who might go somewhere as a box ticking exercise, and then, you miss out on a huge part of what's going to make a difference on how much money you end up making and how many people you end up helping.
Definitely. And that kind of brings back to the second part of that question you asked earlier about what young guys coming through can do. And
good memory.
I just made a note on that back there. Having the experiential part of the whole sport science or ex-phys or coaching, whatever label you want to put on it as a career, you've got to experience stuff. Like, you need to know what it feels like. You need to be in environments where it sucks. You need to be in environments where it's good, and you need to not look at it as good and bad, and just like learning experiences of what would you do? What would you take from that context? What can what would you not do from that context? Like, don't judge people for the experience they're in. Like, to have a step back and go, oh, why the hell they're doing that exercise? You don't usually know why they are, or I wouldn't do that for my athlete. Well, is your athlete like an Olympic sprinter, or is she a swimmer, or what's the context that you're looking at? And you only really get that from being in lots of different environments to realize that there are 1,000 different ways to skin a cat, and you need to have 1,000 different tools in your toolbox so you're armed for all those different clients you're going to deal with, or different injuries you're going to deal with, or different performances you're trying to get out of people as well, different personalities. Like, it's all very helpful, and that's a big part of what a young coach can do coming through uni, is make sure you're networking with people within the industry. If you know you want to be working in professional sport, don't leave it to when you graduate to start making connections within that field. Like, if you know that's what you want to do from year one, you need to be like going out, giving your time up, networking with people, upskilling, doing professional development course. You need to be invested in becoming a better coach. But you need to know that the people out there who are in the right place, they need to know you exist as well. So if you just come in and throw a resume into a job without knowing anyone within the industry, or without having any good experience behind your name, that's always going to be a tough position to come from to get a gig, if that's what you're trying to do. And then obviously surrounding yourself with people who train as well. That's a big part of that experiential learning, just, training yourself, putting yourself through the paces. I guess that would be the networking, training yourself, and kind of like continually trying to grow your toolbox. That would be like the three things that I would put at the top there.
Good advice. And that's pretty much what we've tried to do. And everyone who's wanted to get a shot in elite sport, in real movement, to my knowledge, they've had some access to that environment, whether it's been because of real movement or just, they made that decision and they found it themselves. But, there's definitely a lot of guys who've had those kind of opportunities and gone in that direction. And it's just get yourself in that environment. I remember speaking to Chad McGill, maybe I'll get him on next or sometime soon, but he just finished playing footy and he's like, I'd like to work in footy, but I'm just a PT. And, I set him up to have a couple of interviews, and he actually had contacts because he'd been through footy, and he ended up having 2 job opportunities for that next season when he was like 21. He was like a recent graduate, nothing really, what's next. And he had 2 opportunities. Like, he got offered something at the Roosters as well as at Penrith, and he took the Penrith one, and he worked his way up there, and they won a few competitions in juniors and the New South Wales Cup, and now he's at the Roosters, so, he ended up getting that, pulled him over there, as well. So, like, it's funny how if you just make a decision and just back it with some action, and, for sure, like, the money's not going to be there initially. It's good to do it when you're young, if you've got support from your parents, or somehow that you're not going to starve, that's a good place to be. All right, I think we're coming to an end. I really appreciate your time with this, Huw. I maybe finish with a few thoughts about what's next. You've been going hard with this for quite a while, and you're a little bit older than you look, if I might say so. You look very young compared to your actual biological age. But what are you working on? What are you excited about? What do you see in the next chapter? I'm going to open this door for my daughter.
Yeah, go for it. Well, speaking of daughter, I've got a baby on the way at the end of the year, which is super exciting. So I guess that'll be a new chapter for me. I'll start banking some sleep now. Maybe I won't be looking as young as I do later in the year. So, but yeah, I guess professionally, I really enjoy working at Aspire, where I'm at the moment. We've got Queensland Sports Medicine Centre that we work closely with as well, and those guys are geniuses with what they do. They're kind of at the pinnacle of sports rehab, in my opinion. I think they're the best within Australia, if I'm biased in saying so, but definitely within Queensland, that they're really great at what they do. So I'm enjoying growing there, seeing a whole heap of different people and kind of refining my processes and protocols around rehabbing guys. Maybe putting a few more thoughts down, like in an educational form for people to just read through the ramblings of a madman, like I probably did today, a little bit of ramble, but just kind of, I guess, nutting out some thought processes in that regard, putting that out there for the greater public to kind of critique or have a read of. And I don't know, just keep challenging myself to get better. I've started doing some more professional development stuff consistently this year, been to 3 courses already, diving deep into breathing practice stuff, which has been massive. And I know just getting it, I guess broadening my skill set is really what I hope to do across the next year, add some more assessments and therapies to my toolkit.
I think breathing is a great area to do more exploration. It's cool that, it's come to light how much difference some of the different protocols around that can make to quality of life, quality of recovery, etc. And there's probably a whole other podcast there at some stage. But thanks heaps for your time. If people do want to check you out and follow along a bit more on your journey, maybe there might be an opportunity to get something else going to help get some more of that wisdom out to the world through Real Movement as we get this thing pumping again. But in the meantime, like how can people see a bit more from you, or if they've got questions from today, how can they get in contact?
Mate, they can jump on Insta. I'm sporadic on that, but at Huw Darnell there. And maybe I'll shoot my email through to you and you can chuck it in the notes or something. And people can, if they want to have a bit more of a chat, they can shoot me an email if they got any interesting rehab clients or anything like that. And we can, have a bit of a chat over email.
Probably a good way to finish that. People, if you're really enthusiastic about getting somewhere, people like you are actually pretty open to having a conversation, to helping you solve problems. Like you've done a lot for, where your age and where you're at right now. People coming out of exercise science and sports science probably think, wow, it'd be amazing to ever get to that position. But, you know what it's like as well to be a graduate. So I think that is a huge thing. Like, get connected up and reach out and make stuff happen. Don't just, think you're going to fall into a job, or don't accept, that you're going to end up in some kind of job that you're not that inspired by. Like, get connected, make the effort. And, he's like offering to mentor you personally. No, he's offering, like he's putting his email out there, and people will answer your questions and they want to interact with enthusiastic people who, want to get somewhere. So like that's, I think that's a good way to finish.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I by no means profess to know everything, but maybe I'm a few steps further down the track than these guys want to be. So happy to help out where I can.
Yeah, and I think once you know it all, then it's time to be in the box anyway. The fun is in the mystery, right? Like there's a lot more to solve, and humans are infinitely complex, so there's no chance of having it all answered, really. It's a moving target. Epic. I really
you've done for me as well, Keith, mate. You've been a massive mentor and help, and I talked about self-limiting beliefs, and you were one of those people that kind of unlocked a bit more potential in me, I reckon. So thankful for that.
I appreciate that, man. I really appreciate you making time today and sharing your message, and look forward to being connected more in the future.
Awesome, Keith. Thanks, brother.
Thank you.